Hello, and welcome to the 2019 CMO Virtual Event, The Future of Live Event Marketing. My name is Maria Antwort with Argyle Executive Forum, and it's great to have everyone joining us today. I have a few administrative details to share with you, and then I will turn things over to our esteemed. First, I would like to thank Cvent for their partnership with today's event. They've been a wonderful thought leadership partner to Argyle and are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. So thank you again to Cvent. We appreciate you joining us today. We welcome you to stay connected during today's event. For those of you who are active tweeters, you can use the hashtag ArgyleCMO. You can also follow us on Twitter at Argyle Exec Forum, and be sure to join our LinkedIn group, Chief Marketing Officer CMO Forum. I also wanted to take a moment to touch on our content neutrality policy, which was curated based on the feedback we received over the years from our members. Argyle is very proud and protective of this policy, as it reflects our commitment to ensure the neutrality and overall value of the content presented at our events. We work closely with our speaking faculty to ensure that you receive a set of balanced and neutral viewpoints during the session today. We appreciate our members' support of this policy. Finally, and most importantly, please submit any and all questions that come up during today's event into the Q&A section of the interface. Following the panel discussion, we have set aside time for our speakers to weigh in on these questions. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Mike Dietrich, Vice President of Product Marketing at Cvent. We're pleased to have Mike with us to deliver opening remarks. Welcome, Mike. Over to you.
Great. Thank you, Maria. And let me add my welcome to all of you that have chosen to join us today. Thanks very much for giving us a bit of your time. By quick introduction, my name is Mike Dietrich. I lead the product marketing function here at Cvent, and hoping to spend the next few minutes talking a little bit about the opportunity that sits in most of our live event programs and how to capture the most of that opportunity to drive your organization forward. So in the next few minutes, we're going to talk not only about how to get more attendees there, but probably more important, how to help convert those attendees into business. So without further ado, let's get started. Again, my name is Mike Dietrich, leading the product marketing function here at Cvent. So let's start with a little bit of a background on the opportunity that sits in most of the live event programs that comprise our mix. If you are like most of the folks on the webinar today, we wake up with these things in mind. These are almost the universal needs of any marketing function these days. The need to go ahead and capture interest, capture awareness in the marketplace, meet and exceed those lead targets. But then as marketing has become very full funnel and metric driven oriented, the need doesn't stop at capture. It continues down to the ability to convert those leads into sales accepted opportunities and ultimately closed won business. And then it transits all the way down to the ability to prove the impact of all of that activity and all of that spend. And like if you're like me, we have constructed our marketing mix to do this. We have built systems and processes to not only capture interest and awareness, but convert that and ultimately be able to prove the impact of that event spend or that spend at all in your marketing mix. And most of us probably have programs that look like this. Events really do drive that customer journey. If you follow me to the left for a second, events are an integral part of that buyer's journey from awareness down to purchase, where we will attend events, we will host events, and they become critical parts of our mix to drive brand awareness, to capture new leads, and to advance opportunities that we might already have in the funnel. But even after the purchase is done and someone is a customer, events continue to be very important elements in the mix to create follow-on loyalty, adoption and training perhaps, drive upsell and cross-sell and enhance that lifetime value. So throughout the marketing mixes that we construct, events tend to play a very important and central role in the journey up to purchase and then even after purchase. And much of the research we see, this happens to be a statistic from Serious Decisions, that many modern marketing organizations continue to spend a significant amount of their program spend at least in the B2B space, on the live events program. And we do this for a reason. Live events have some special advantages over perhaps all the other elements in our marketing mix. For starters, they are a very high engagement channel. Right? Of all the channels and tactics that we have at our disposal, events can capture deep customer demographic and firmographic interest. They can capture deep data. And there's something that continues to be magical about the face-to-face interactions where at the end of the day, we continue to do business with those we trust. And in all of the channels we have, whether they're digital, live, out of home, events continue to be a very high engagement channel in our mix. They are also wonderful generators of expressed interest. And what I mean by that is as someone comes to and generates data through your event, they are in many cases voting with their feet. You get very high fidelity feedback on the topics they're interested in, the booths they visit, the appointments they schedule and keep, and even off to the data that they may share in registering for your event. These are very, very rich data sources that give you a very high fidelity look into the expressed interest that our customers and prospects may have. And finally, they're wonderful lead accelerators. If you're like me, many of you have several parts of your marketing nurture. We certainly use content very liberally to try to drip people down from awareness to purchase. Content drips are wonderful. They can take a long time to bear fruit. There's nothing quite like being face-to-face at an event to be able to diagnose the problem of the attendee and be able to quickly take them down to the solution that you may have to solve that person's problem. So events can also be wonderful lead accelerators. So if you sum all this together, the live event part of our mix is omnipresent. It's there before and after purchase. And live events continue to have an advantage over some of our more distant or more digital channels in terms of capturing interest, understanding buyer behavior and interests, and then getting those people more quickly down the funnel, ultimately to purchase. And what we have found is that many event programs look like the depiction you see on the screen now. They're a combination of events we host, from our most important Tier 1 events, which could be our marquee user conference, thousands, tens of thousands people attending these Tier 1 events, to our Tier 2 events, which could be less, we might have 3 or 4 of these a year, attendees in the several hundreds, and all the way down even to our Tier 3 events, where these events are happening almost constantly in the marketing mix. They're regional in scope, they may be local in scope, but you get the sense of the totality of the event program of the events you host. Many of us also spend a great deal of our marketing budgets on events we attend. These are your classic trade shows. Again, broken down into that Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3 nomenclature, where your Tier 1 events you attend are your 2 or 3 biggest shows that you're going to. Again, down to some of maybe your partner events in Tier 3. And so for many of us, the opportunity out there looks something like this, where throughout all of the tiers and throughout the events we host and the events we attend, the potential there is to collect thousands of high-value touch points, as we might see the same interested prospect in multiple events. We might see them only in one, but we're getting that very rich data about not only who they are, what account they're from, what their interests are. So as we like to say, this event program opportunity, the opportunity is for thousands of potential marketing qualified leads, but also thousands of opportunities to gather additional information about the makeup and interests of our customers and prospects. But if only it were that easy. That is the dream. I think the reality for many of us and many of the folks that we talk to is that the event program that they actually realize and the value they actually extract from that opportunity is not quite the pretty picture I just painted. The reality is that across the totality of the events that we host and the events we attend, again, up to 40% of many B2B marketing budgets, the reality is that there is limited visibility into the full potential of those events. Leads are missed, leads never materialize, and those leads that do tend to come may not be followed up as quickly and as professionally as we'd like to see, costing our organizations a tremendous amount of value. And the rationale, the reasons we see for this over and over again is there is little standardization around how all of our events are approached, managed, executed, and measured. The problems are many. Maybe you see them, some you recognize here on the left. Multiple products or tech fragmentation, where it's hard to get a consistent hold, let alone consistent adoption of some of the key processes or tools that are used, not only to register people, but to capture leads at events. Inconsistent processes abound through a program of these sizes, where you might have different ways of capturing information, different ways of qualifying information, different ways of making sure your executives and your sales teams are making the best use of their appointments while on site. And then certainly the bane of my existence, inconsistent data. As tech fragments throughout a live event program, each of those elements are generating inconsistent data back into probably what many of us consider our core source of truth, our marketing tech stacks and our CRM. And probably many of us are familiar with the problem of non-standard data clogging the systems and making otherwise valuable touch points and interactions unusable to our downstream sales and marketing teams because it just can't get through the pipes. And so they have these tremendous integration headaches that flow from the fact that we have not standardized and been consistent with our approach into how we operate these things. And so while this is the pretty picture that many promise, the reality tends to be that in many cases, in many of our events, while we may be executing well in our tier ones, our tier two events suffer from missed opportunities, missed leads, poor qualification that sales and marketing can't do anything with, or in many cases, we deal with many customers that don't bother capturing leads at all from some of their tier 2 and 3s because the tech fragmentation and the inability for a sales or on-site staff team to be able to operate the tech becomes such a burden that many of these opportunities are lost altogether. So to crystallize that problem and maybe simplify it, what we have seen over and over again is when it comes to our live events, there's a tremendous lead generation problem. Vanishing leads. They're leads that are missing, ineffective appointment setting. You wrote the check to go to that great trade show. You show up and the staff is sitting there without productive use of their time, not meeting the right people, meeting the wrong people, and not making the best use of executive or sales times. Poor lead follow-up is a critical problem facing many of us, where once that data is captured and that appointment happens or that lead is scanned, slow or no follow-up, or almost as worse, ineffective follow-up. We've seen statistics that it can take on average 2 weeks to follow up on live event leads. And in our business, that is almost marketing malpractice. Because in that time, the lead has gone cold, the urgency and the recency has faded, and if you're in a trade show situation, it is highly likely that the competitor in the booth next to you has reached out much faster in a much more targeted fashion and is now setting the dialogue with that new prospect. And then finally, another issue we see over and over again is no attribution potential. I guess many of us have heard the old joke in marketing that 50%, I can measure 50% of my spend. I can't measure the other 50. The only problem is I don't know which one is valuable. And we do see that time and time again in live events where there is an inability to actually attribute revenue and attribute ROI to the live event portion of the spend. And in our information and in our research, only a third of CMOs that we've spoken to believe they have the analytics needed to validate their event spend. And that's a big problem because in a digital world where you can measure and optimize large portions of your digital spend, marketing program budgets and capital tends to be allocated and flow to the parts of the mix where there is proof of impact. And if that's your reality, multiple stages of the funnel underperform. If you are missing those leads, not capturing them, not qualifying them, not getting down to sales and marketing fast enough, the entire funnel underperforms. You lose the insight into what the buyer or customer really cares about. You certainly lose the MQL flow, fewer sales conversations, lost pipeline, and all the way down to lost revenue. So hopefully you've been able to see yourself a little bit in these problems. Certainly many of these are very persistent in the clients that we talk to. So what do we do about this? What is that path forward? And in the next 8 minutes or so, I'll try to share a few thoughts outside of the problem and get us to solution. So what I think is interesting here is that many of us have invested heavily in technology to make sure that our systems and processes and all of our digital channels are humming smoothly. We have marketing tech stacks that are quite robust now. We have CRMs that are quite robust. And we invest in those systems because they help us automate and standardize our lead generation, lead conversion, and ultimately lead attribution and revenue attribution processes. And so the path forward on the event side looks very similar. It's starting to automate that event lead gen and qualification processes. It is applying those automation elements consistently across all your events. So not just stopping at your marquee events, but realizing that there is tremendous value in the tier 2s and the tier 3s, and that those events are as worthy and have as many critical touch points as your tier 1s. And then finally, the ability to take that information and just like you do with all your digital touch points in your digital mix, integrate all of that valuable data into your marketing tech stack, into your CRMs, into your systems of truth, so they can be leveraged downstream. So what might that look like? In a classic pre-event element for your hosted events, the ability to increasingly, the game is about personalized multi-channel outreach. In a fragmented, noisy world, generic just doesn't cut it. This outbound needs to be very personalized. It needs to be multi-channel. It needs to actually continue on through the web and registration process that we take our attendees through, and I'll go over this in more detail in a moment. And then the ability to pre-qualify. During that registration process, tremendous amount of information is at your disposal about the topics of interest that the attendee is coming to your event with. That information can be converted very easily into appointment settings with the right people. So you're helping make sure that attendee is connected to people that can actually help solve their problem. During the event, in a hosted event situation, drive that engagement, whether it's with appointments, whether it's a booth visit, whether it's the sessions they enroll for or sessions they attend. Each of that is wonderful data exhaust. So not only are you driving that engagement, you're capturing it and you're measuring it, and you're using it to enhance the qualification of that attendee. With every interaction they have at your event, they are telling you something about what they care about and the urgency with which they care about that. That is tremendous information if you can capture it all, and then ultimately, in a post-event scenario, get that data packaged up in a standardized way, get it off to your sales and marketing team so they can take the next best action. On the trade show side, very similar. Inviting and pre-qualifying is critical to trade show success. We are seeing more and more of the community leverage their sales channel to invite qualified leads. Activating the sales channel as a lead generation mechanism and as appointment setting mechanism for trade shows is now accounting for 60 to 70% of some of the programs we see in terms of the on-show appointments that are being generated. And putting all of that data that we know about the attendee into the appointment itself. So when the time comes to get to that trade show floor, or that the sales rep or the executive has all the information at their fingertips to have a productive, targeted, on-point conversation. Certainly at the event, checking them in, not only checking in the appointment itself, but using that same piece of technology to capture new leads and using all of that data to further qualify, right? Most of us are very familiar with qualification questions in these tools. That's wonderful. Standardize that to the extent you can. It'll help your sales teams and Boost app operate these systems more cleanly, and it'll help your downstream tech stacks and your downstream sales and marketing organizations be able to make quicker, better use of that information. And so just like on the hosted events, that best practice looks like once you've got that, time is of the essence, get that quickly routed to your sales and marketing team for follow-up. And if you execute across those things, that's going to enable program-wide success, right? The more you can standardize, the more you can automate that, the more you can eliminate the fragmentation and process and tech from your approach to your live events, you're going to be able to drive scale. You're going to be able to take that same process and implement those across your tier 1s, tier 2s, and tier 3s and your hosted and attended events. Standardizing that collection of data becomes a critical competitive differentiator for the folks that do this well. They let you move faster and allow more rapid and complete and predictable data into the systems where it matters most. And that gets to that last point here where you're defining those integration points and you're able to route the leads to the right person or even the right team. As we'll go through in a second, some of these buying signals are just not ready for sales yet. They need to go to marketing for nurture. So as we quickly unpack these, on the capture side, what we're seeing more and more as people try to increase lead volume and quality, it's all about that personalized automated marketing. Many of the larger events that are handled will have 16 to 20 individualized outbound paths to make sure that we're talking to those people in a way that's relevant to them. That personalized journey must continue on to the event website. That is the front door to your event. The fundamental job of an event website is to turn somebody that's curious into an attendee, into a registrant. And critical to that journey is to have that be a personalized experience for them. And then all the way down through the registration path. If it's a VIP, if it's a returning customer, they may expect a separate registration experience that highlights the content and experience that's valuable and relevant to them. Here's where we continue to see activating the sales channel as a critical differentiator and a critical boost to actually drive lead and event attendance. Some of the programs we see that do this extremely well have very aggressive sales outbound programs. Setting appointments then becomes critical as your executives, as your senior sales teams need to be able to make the most constructive and productive use of their time on site. Don't leave this piece to chance. This is like fumbling the ball at the 1 yard line. If you've paid a lot of money to be at that show and then all of a sudden the reps and the executives are not meeting the folks that can be most beneficial to their business. And then during the event, automating that lead capture for all hosted and sponsored events tends to be critical. We do continue to see many programs where they execute this quite well at their tier 1s and maybe their tier 2s, but their tier 3 events, they execute this very poorly. And in many of our marketing minds, we see that as hundreds or potentially even thousands of lost leads or lost opportunities to better understand our buyers. Then as we get to the convert stage, improved lead activation, custom qualification questions that are consistent throughout to the extent possible. The consistency here helps drive adoption by your Boost staff, by your sales staff, and helps that data ingest process down the line as the systems know what type of information they're looking for. And wherever possible, none of this information does any good in our desk drawer. It needs to be funneled directly to our marketing tech stacks and CRM tools where our sales teams and our marketing teams can pick it up quickly and act on it. This is just a quick view of how that activation step may look, where someone comes to the event with a pre-event score, and based on our understanding of what they did at that event, the session attendance, the level of engagement at that session, or their appearance at a trade show. Certainly in many of our marketing algorithms, these touch points can be scored. They're given a point value, and that attendee then exits the other side with a view on a total event score. In this case, for your organization, 60 might be not quite ready to go to sales. Let's send those folks off to marketing for nurture. The 50 not quite ready to do anything yet. And 95, though, could be a hot lead that tells us we need to route that directly to sales for maximum impact. And so the full system then starts to look something like this, right? When you're starting to have to prove the value of the investment, proving the value for many of this type of spend needs to follow the same path as much of our digital spend, where we're capturing all this event attendee data, contact data, engagement data. We're capturing that in our tech systems, and we're making sure we share that with our systems of truth. Again, not only so marketing and sales reps can follow up, but because these systems tend to be our systems of truth for how we handle attribution, how we ultimately quantify the impact of any marketing investment. So getting that information, getting it into our systems of truth tends to be that last mile that too many people don't take to be able to ultimately prove the impact of our investment in our live event program. So the last couple of slides I'll leave you with is as we look at what that proving impact might look like, just a couple visuals here, where some of the customers that we work with that do this very well are able to, for every event they host, for every event they attend, they are able to not only understand the spend profile of that event, they're able to understand how many pre-event leads they had, how many post-event leads they've had. They've hooked this into their marketing and tech systems, their CRM systems, and are able to actually attribute revenue down to the specific event level. And when you've gotten to this level of execution and this level of insight and transparency into your event program, it unlocks a tremendous amount of not only the ability to prove the value, but the decision support that many marketing programs need about where to continue to invest in your event program, where these events no longer make sense, and reallocating that capital either to other events or to other more productive uses in the marketing tech stack. And while we're privileged to work with many customers, I've put one in here, Morningstar. They have done this, I think, tremendously well in their ability not only to apply the technology footprint you see on the left consistently across their events, but they're able to start reporting back in very high fidelity, not only the number of leads that are available in this case in this investment conference, but actually able to start measuring attributed revenue, see that climb year over year, measuring event profit across their entire event program, which you can see a little bit on the right. And then very, very pleased to see that not only is this about the numbers game, which is certainly critical to all of us, but the ability of that team, and specifically at Morningstar, to just kind of take their rightful seat at the table. And they've seen their careers grow as they've been able to impact bottom line, improve bottom line to the C-suite. So those are some opening remarks. I apologize. I may have gone 4 minutes or so too long. My apologies to the Argyle team for that. But that concludes my prepared remarks, and I'm pleased to be joined with a bunch of people much smarter than me on our panel, and I'm certainly looking forward to a discussion with them.
Thank you, Mike. As a reminder to all of our listeners, please submit any questions you have in the Q&A interface. And following the panel discussion, we have set aside time for speakers to weigh in on these questions. We'll now kick off our panel discussion titled The Future of Live Event Marketing. Today's panel will also be moderated by Mike. Now I'll ask our esteemed panelists to introduce themselves. Please, could you start, Lloyd?
Yes, hi, my name is Lloyd Ballman. I'm head of branded live and premium experiences at TD Bank.
Paramita?
Hi, everybody. Glad to be here. My name is Paramita Bhattacharya, and I'm the Global Head of Marketing at Nokia Technologies.
And Tony?
Hi, my name is Tony Kempa. I am the Managing Director, and I am responsible for marketing, business development, and brand for ESD.
And Fiona?
Hi, I'm Fiona Kyle, and I'm VP for Entertainment and Events for Unibail Rodamco Westfield, based out of New York, but looking after events across the East Coast and the UK.
Thank you. Mike, over to you.
Fantastic. And just a quick thank you again to all of our panelists for joining today. So I've got a few questions here, and this can be a little bit of a free-for-all. I may call on a couple of you specifically, but I think I and the rest of the audience would benefit greatly from many of your perspectives on the question. But let me start with, Paramita, maybe I start with you. The topic of digital transformation has been on the minds of marketing leaders for many years now as they try to bring automation and even maybe AI into their marketing. Can you speak a little bit about how digital transformation may have impacted the live event portion of your marketing mix? And has it? And if so, in what ways?
Thank you, Mike. So, in general, and this was reflected, of course, in your presentation, the overall campaign model has been impacted and transformed by digital. And then, of course, the events is a component of that campaign model. So the key areas that I have seen over the last few years, both at Nokia and other tech companies that I have worked at, is, in a couple of places. One is, I would say, targeting customers, really based on interest, segmenting that. And that couldn't have been possible without the digital transformation component and the marketing automation, that is in place today with the marketing stack. There is also, I would say, platforms, the social platforms. And so targeting customers, once the segmentation has done through channels such as that, has been fairly impactful for us. And then the third one, I would say, is personalization, which I think is the most important. And, I haven't yet brought into the AI world completely in that sense, but personalization is really, really key at the moment. And I think your presentation reflected that as well. And I expect to see AI doing much more in that area. And so I think from those three areas, the transformation has really impacted. But then I also see sort of ad venue, during event transformation, we know that there is no longer, not to just say print materials, but the fact that we now have apps, especially for hosted user conferences at Adobe and Hitachi, both the companies that I worked in. We had big user conferences, and that meant really honing into the app component of it, streaming sessions live, having recorded sessions on demand, and then using the app to do some customer satisfaction surveys, post that, having the app sort of reflect a lot of the engagement that you can drive, and then, try to bring that back into the fold once the event is over. So I think from an event spectrum perspective, transformation has happened both at the pre-event level, at the at-event level, and then, of course, the post-follow-up is largely automated today for most of us, especially in the tech and the B2B world, with both follow-ups and then how the funnel performs with these leads and the lead capture and the lead retrieval.
Great. Thank you, Paramita. Just opened up to Lloyd or Tony or Fiona. Any other comments that you particularly want to share on the digital transformation piece?
This is Lloyd. I think one of the things that we've seen as part of the digital transformation is it's not just a technology thing, it's also an education and awareness thing for our employees. So we do some pretty deep certifications with employees of all levels throughout the organization to make sure everyone understands and is comfortable with the digital transformation, and that goes a long way in helping us sort of evolve ourselves as we move to the future.
Great, thank you all. So Fiona, I'm gonna pick on you for a second. As we were having our pre-call for this, I was really interested in some of the volume, just sheer volume of the number of attendees that come through some of your events in your event program. And so I'm going to hand it over to you for a second. Can you talk about some of the ways you've been able to increase the attendance at your events in such a competitive, noisy landscape out there?
Hi, Fiona, you might be on mute.
Yep, Fiona, you might be. Oh, it looks like her phone line went down. Okay, so
yeah, Mike,
Tony,
I can jump in. Yeah, I can jump in because we were talking about that. Yeah, on our prep call, Fiona definitely has the volume where our firm, because we're professional services, and the majority of our work, which we have like 90% repeat clients, it's built on trust. And so we're building events that foster that trust. So what was great was Fiona was talking about thousands of people, where we've been developing events for the future on a smaller scale. So we've taken events that were 150 to 200 people and broke them down to 20 people. And through these events, they're curated. They are really looking at how do we foster building a relationship beyond the professional services consulting that we do. And so when we look at the transformation, the volume, the size, a lot of things that you were talking about earlier, Mike, is a really good foundation for the process. And then I think that digital transformation, we align the digital products according to what our processes are for our specific industry, our specific firm, and what we're trying to accomplish. So it doesn't mean that we're not going to do large events, but our focus right now is really creating that intimate, personal, authentic experience for people over 1 to 3 hours on a small scale, but it's highly personalized.
Yeah, that's interesting. And Fiona, I think we've got you back, and it's interesting. We see that more and more, right? Where there are the events where volume is the key metric, but more and more there are events where the quality of the attendee and the quality of the experience that you're able to deliver is the currency that others are after. So Fiona, do we have you back?
Yes, I'm back. Sorry, our phone lines just literally fell over. It's like, oh, that's interesting.
No worries.
So I'm back now.
It wouldn't be a webinar if there weren't some gremlins that live in the system.
Sure.
But Fiona, did you hear? So just interested in, one of the things that I was struck with is you and I spoke a few nights ago, getting ready for today, was the scale of some of the events that you are able to put on. And many of us are just curious about how you are able to drive that type of interest and awareness at that scale, and just what is an incredibly competitive, noisy landscape out there.
Yeah, I mean, we run, as Tony said, we actually run a scale of events in excess of sometimes 5,000 to 6,000 people, all the way down to smaller events as well, and it's really that delivers against a number of KPIs for us. So the large scale events is all about that, sort of big showcase experience. It's when we're turning our Christmas lights on. It's when, we're hosting potentially a film premiere, and a lot of it's about even on those larger scale events, giving people an experience that they're not able to get anywhere else. So, but something that's still sort of relevant and unique to us and our audiences. So we're very careful when we pick what kind of content that's going to be. So whether it's say a film premiere with sort of the latest Marvel movie, or whether it's Justin Bieber or somebody performing, it's still got to be relevant to the audience, and there's certainly areas where that wouldn't be appropriate or wouldn't work. So it's really for us about that experience, making it immersive, driving the social sharing, giving people something that they can't get anywhere else. And what we find is that then drives the loyalty back to us, because we want that talkability and want people to keep coming back for more, because that then supports conversion into the retail, which is obviously what we're all about.
Great, thank you. Let me pivot for a second to kind of the concept of, so just in talking with all of you, we all have different kind of events that we're throwing, but at the end of the day, there is an element of measurement and perhaps proof of impact that we're all in search of, because all of these events cost money. Lloyd, if I can ask you to maybe kickstart this, but then again would open it up to the rest of the panelists. How are you and TD Bank measuring the effectiveness of the meetings and events that you put on? What metrics do you use to determine success?
Well, I think to speak to the how, because we've got a really broad portfolio of events that we do, but for some we're using beacons. For some we use RFID technology. For some it's through on-site surveying. Mobile ticketing has become a big thing for us because of the ability to track and retain information. And then something that we're really looking at right now is how can we insert sort of analog experiences into the digital journey of a customer. You know, looking at creating digital intercepts within the event space so that we can sort of capture those leads in our traditional marketing funnel. Looking at computer vision right now, but haven't taken that one on yet.
Okay. Paramita, what about you in your world? You know, in the tech side of the world, how are you measuring the success of the event? Are you looking for just attendee goals? Are you looking for attributed revenue? Are you looking for pipeline? What are the metrics that you're chasing in your event program?
I think we're chasing everything. I don't know that we have everything. You know, registration. So I think the global event strategy, both at Nokia and the other tech companies that I've worked on, are typically broken down in that sort of bigger buckets. You know, there are bigger trade shows we are attending and bigger user conferences we are putting up, as well as the whole host of smaller roundtables and very curated events that we are doing across the world, especially hosted by regional teams and field marketing teams. I would say I've always championed for sort of two levels of measurements across the board. One is the brand measurement, and especially when we are getting into this bigger shows like CES and Cannes Lion and things like that, where it's important to sort of look at what is our overall earned media, PR reach, articles, interviews, social engagement, you know, community followers, share of voice during that conference and within our competitive landscape. So that's definitely something we measure from brand perspective. And then, you know, from a demand perspective, it's all of the transactional elements, the leads generated, the on-site meetings. You know, we typically, sales and marketing, do a combined postmortem. So we've started to look at a little bit more qualitative feedback. So there is volume, of course, in the bigger shows that are coming. But even with the bigger shows, we are saying, you know, let's get more targeted now that, you know, we are able to, in the pre-show, be more targeted with the registration and with who is coming for what, and our scheduling and the sales meetings and all of the on-site things, if they're going accurately. Then let's look at the feedback. And then, you know, putting that into the funnel, we haven't been successful completely in drawing attribution all the way, but we have started to understand, you know, sort of the spend, the pipeline generated against the spend, and then how the channel event as a channel is performing compared to the other marketing channel. And that's where the qualification comes really into place. The smaller events have, you know, very curated, almost hand-picked attendance. Of course, we don't measure volume there, but we definitely measure how further they are into the qualification and in the sales process. And they are largely, you know, a combination of both curated and also sort of, you know, accelerated. They work as accelerators. Some of them may have come through our bigger shows, and now we are moving them into these local shows in their cities and in their regions to take the conversation forward.
Great, thank you. Tony or Fiona, anything to add there on the measurement of success, measurement of effectiveness?
I mean, from our side, it's a little, you know, broader. You know, our responsibility is to deliver sales to the retailers, but the metric that we know works is dwell. So it's not necessarily volume of people, it's how long they stay. So ours is very much around increasing that dwell, which is another reason why, yes, the large-scale events, but also a myriad of other sort of immersive events and experiences that we stage within our malls really helps that dwell. So we tend to find that sort of dwell equals spend, but then equally, experience equals dwell, which equals spend. So there's some sort of relatively basic dots that we try to join together, and we then obviously get the sales back from the retailers, so we're able to sort of correlate those to what we've had going on in the mall at any particular time.
Great, thank you. And
me,
Maria, do we have time for, Tony, go ahead. Tony, go ahead.
No, it's okay. We don't have time, but just for us to measure this, initially it was just, can we even have an event? And then we've become more sophisticated over time through intentional conversations across functions within the company. And what we look at right now is we follow up every one of these small events with an NPS survey, the feedback we're getting, the referrals that we're receiving that other people would find value in it. So we're measuring it from that perspective because we're looking at it in building relationships and creating authentic events that are of value to the people who are there. And from that perspective, when I come back with that qualitative data, it's very powerful because our sales cycle is very long. And so it shows us that we're building, our future pipeline.
Got it. Thank you. And Maria, do we have time for one more? Oh, very good. Okay, so then let me turn. Perfect. Got it. So let me turn. Maybe Fiona, start with you, and then maybe work our way down. When you look at how this space has evolved over the last 5 years or so, can you comment on how your events or your event programs have evolved in the last couple of years, and particularly if you've kind of encountered issues of scale, how you've been able to tackle those? But just can you give us a sense of how the playing field has changed and how your event programs have evolved in the last 5 years or so?
Yeah, sure. I mean, everybody talks about it, but it now is even more about the experience than the giveaways. I mean, people want that experience, and then really sort of how they are able to share that experience. I mean, social sharing is such a key part of what we do. People want to be able to share that with their peer groups, experience something that other people haven't, and so everybody else is getting that sort of FOMO, as they say, the sort of fear of missing out. But that's been a key switch. So whereas we would sort of put together booklets of discounts, which we still do, but it's really about what is the wrapping around that, what's the experience around that, how are we making it something more than just a book of coupons, because that's not engaging. And then the key piece for us is really being genuine and unique. It is a very competitive marketplace. Everybody's doing things. I mean, you see often the same things popping up within sort of town centres and city centres, as well as sort of in shopping malls. So how do we create things that are unique but remaining genuine to our brand and our what we're trying to be for our customers? So yeah, it's really sort of weaving that sort of digital experience into the overall piece. And making it beyond just the vouchers and the giveaways, and that's been a real shift for us over the last probably 5 to 8 years, I would say.
We've seen the same trend, the trend towards personalization and engagement and experience. The events that have clung to kind of here's our generic content for a generic audience have not fared very well. Does anybody else, Lloyd or Paramita or Tony, anything else on just in terms of perspectives on how the event programs that you're running, the event part of your mix, has changed over the last few years?
One of the things I would say that has happened that I think has been a big positive is sort of, events experience used to be very siloed. you put up an experience, you got your stuff done, and then you came back. But now it's a larger part of the landscape in the sense that we are doing a lot more that we are bringing back to the campaigns, that are running sort of on the evergreen side. So experiences of the demos and experiences of people and talking to, recording, things on site there. And sort of a lot of that material, maybe there are sessions that are happening that we are doing on demand later on. So a lot of that material and that content and that experience, we are now able to bring that back into our website, into our campaign funnel, into our, other sort of partnership and alliances and everything else that's going on. And I think that's been really, really positive and helpful.
Great. Thank you. Lloyd, Tony, anything that you see here, or time to move on?
Do you have anything, Tony?
There's just no. Go ahead. Lloyd, did you have something?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead, Lloyd.
Just real quick. I mean, I think in the 10 years ago, we would just launch, a brand platform and use all the traditional methods to get it out to the consumer. And, a big change for us is that we spend a lot of time launching to employees first. Did a 13-city roadshow for about 13,000 people on the new brand positioning before we launched Unexpectedly Human, and that really increased our uptake time, or decreased it. So, we're able to get something up and deployed to customers within 3 months, which normally would have taken 6 to 9 months to take. So, effective.
Right. And then, Tony, you want to take us home on this question about how the event programs that you look after have evolved?
Yeah, if I could sum it up, there's no cruise control. It's continuously evolving, developing the process that I talked about earlier. Even within some of these programs, we're continuously getting feedback from people and changing these events. And so from the past, it was just great that we could get an event going. But then, as Paramita said, there's all these other things around an event that are of great value, which you outlined in your presentation by showing there's a foundation and structure before and after, all these things that you need to do. It's hard work, and it's continuously evolving, so there is no cruise control. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah, that's certainly the way it feels. So I think we've got time for one more, and so maybe here the question we close with, and I'd love if all of you could touch on this. Just looking out, looking out at the next, let's say, 12 to 18 months. What are your priorities for your marketing department? And it could be specifically as they relate to your meetings and events program, but it need not be. But looking out at the next 12 to 18 months, what are the key priorities that you've got for your marketing department? And maybe we'll just go left to right. So maybe we start with you, Lloyd. I know we'll just go left to right across the slide.
Sure. I think a big priority for us is going carbon neutral on all our programs. So that's a big focus. And then, this was spoken about earlier, but getting cohesive and consistent KPIs that translate throughout marketing and throughout the bank, so that everyone is seeing and understanding the same information. That's something we're going to be working on as well.
Great, thank you. Paramita, what about Nokia? What are your priorities for the next 12 to 18 months there?
Yeah, I would say customer experience and customer journey undoubtedly, and a complete pivot from a customer perspective, and that means, how do we drive value? And so if it's events or, multiple set of things that we are doing, all the tactics and campaigns, but all of that together has to be very value-driven and from a focus, from a perspective of a customer mindset where we are solving problems and we are, in places where they are, and we are accelerating sort of their solutions and what they need from us.
Hey, thank you. Tony?
Sure. All caps, evolution, all lowercase, transformation. We are embarking on aggressive growth for our company over the next 5 years, and marketing has a key role in that, from internal communication all the way to every piece of the marketing puzzle, to the brand value and creating consistent growth.
Okay. And Fiona, what are your priorities for the next 12 to 18 months, either just for the marketing department as a whole or as they relate to your events program?
Yeah, I mean, from a sort of marketing perspective, it's really how do we get granular on understanding customer spend and what drives loyalty. We are rolling out a loyalty program as well, which is going to sort of start us getting into that data, and then how we translate that into the journey, the overall sort of experience, both from an event and a general sort of mall perspective, and then really sort of tying all that together into sort of the general sort of theatre of retail, because that's the kind of thing that we're focused on is making it relevant and understandable, and really putting people into the experience versus just shopping online.
Fantastic. Well, thank you to all of you. I mean, Lloyd, Paramita, Tony, Fiona, thank you so much for your thoughts and perspectives. I learned a tremendous amount from you four just in the last 20, 25 minutes, so thank you. Maria, I think I hand it back over to you now to see if we've got questions from our audience.
Thank you. Thank you to the panelists and Mike for doing a great job moderating. We're now going to review some of the questions that were submitted by the audience during the discussion. The first question is directed to Lloyd. Could you please describe an ideal event for TD Bank, one that ticks all the boxes, and why?
The question was ideal event for TD Bank and one that ticks all the boxes?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, okay. I think an ideal event for us is one that's got several layers, and I've alluded to it before, but we've really come to think of marketing as being something that's just as important that employees be engaged with and helping us deliver as it is sort of anything that the external consumer is seeing. So sort of the event that ticks all the boxes for me are ones that sort of get our grassroots employee base invested in what we're doing and empowers and enables them to help us deliver upon it. We just find it's very effective when we do it that way.
Thank you, Lloyd. The next question is, some recent events don't have a lead capture system, but a mobile app that is accessible by the attendees only. This data cannot be downloaded in a normal sense. How do we ask the event organizers to give us access to this data?
This is Tony.
Yeah, go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I don't know who that was supposed to go to. I have, in reviewing contracts before deciding and confirming to be at an event, I look for that in the contracts, and I have those conversations before the event on how we're going to get information.
That's right. This is Paramita. I think it's critical the lead process is sort of understood. There are a lot of shows that will have their own lead process, irrespective of what app or anything else that you may be running, and it's a little complicated sometimes to get that lead retrieval out of them, but then you don't have a choice at those shows. And if it's your own hosted event, of course, you have a lot of choices in terms of how you set that up.
Great.
Yeah.
So the third question, go ahead.
No, I guess the only thing I would say is that we do see that, yes, many trade shows you attend, there'll be lead capture options there. Just a couple things that we have seen. The first is, as GDPR, the Global Data Protection Regulations take hold, we see increasing regulatory scrutiny, data privacy issues. Right? That's just something for all of us to keep in mind when we're looking at data capture, data integrity, data in transit, data at rest. That is becoming more and more on at least the folks' minds that we talk to. The other piece is the element around the inconsistency of data capture elements across a broad portfolio of shows can be a headwind to actual capture and to the actual ability to take that data, normalize it, standardize it, get it through your systems, and getting it off to your sales and marketing people. So to the extent you can, make that as consistent, that practice as consistent as it can be.
Great. So you ready for the third question? It's
sure.
What are some examples of experiences you've created for your brand's live events, especially those tier 1 events? I think this is for Mike.
Sorry, Maria, is that directed at me?
It's not directed at you. Anyone can take the lead on this.
Okay, then I will wait and give someone else a shot.
So very quickly, one of our portfolios has been VR until most recently, and that meant VR cameras. And so, it's a bit of a easy, I wouldn't say easy, but it is definitely more experience leaning. So for tier 1 shows, for us, that was CES, Sundance, Cannes Lion, NAB, we would really have the VR experience. We would have demos of our technology and our hardware and software and cameras, but we would have head-mounted displays. We would have VR experiences that people could come and see, and the content was sort of across the board from entertainment to sort of healthcare to education, and those are usually a big hit. People would stand in the line to put on the head-mounted side and, play around with that. But then, of course, we were, it was self-serving for us because we were obviously doing the VR portfolio and technology and then using VR to do the experience itself.
Anyone else want to answer that question?
Well, this is Mike. I'll just say, kind of echo, Paramita and I occupy the same space, and from a tech perspective. And so in our hosted events, where we control the message, we control the invite, right? We control all elements of the event. We have made broad use of VR as a way to just kind of give people a more immersive experience into the environment that's created outside of a tech product. So that's been an element we've started experimenting with. We have a kind of a broad innovation pavilion. These could be things that we're working on that are not yet ready for prime time, but it's fun. You play around, and it gets you. It's good not only as a leading indicator of where the tech might be going. It's also a way to present the brand as a more forward-looking, innovative element. So there are certain things like that we can showcase in an innovation pavilion setting, using not only the technology, but actually giving the attendees a preview into what the road looks like, 2 or 3 years ahead, that hopefully they take away an undercurrent of innovation and excitement that's only possible in kind of these big tier 1 events where that type of investment is warranted and that type of curation of experience is possible.
Thank you. The next question is, how important is building loyalty in your live event marketing effort? What do you do to accomplish your goal here? Anyone want to
So I can jump in a little bit on that to start with. So from our perspective, loyalty is a key point of differentiation that we're wanting to build on. So wherever we're doing live events, we tend to have sort of VIP access and different levels of access and experience depending on where people are within their loyalty program. And again, really driving that sort of, I want to get into that space, or I want to meet that particular influencer, again, to encourage people to sign up to the loyalty program. Again, that's So say it's a key driver for us for the next 12 to 18 months. And it's really, we definitely use the experiences and the depth of experience to help drive that loyalty piece and make it more valuable to our customers.
Okay, so the next question is, what do you see as the biggest trend in live event marketing?
Oh, maybe I'll start this. And, not only do we put on our own marketing mix here at Cvent, we kind of drink our own champagne. We host and attend over 1,000 meetings a year. And we work with clients that have similar style programs. I think if I had to boil it down to one thing, I think Paramita mentioned it earlier. It's this relentless pursuit of personalization and relevance to the attendee. It's just so crowded out there. It's so noisy out there. The attendees have so many opportunities to be able to engage with brands and to be able to engage with content. It really does take more and more of a concerted effort to break through that and drive interest, let alone attendance at an event. And more the folks that we talk to, and we try to do this ourselves, is this relentless pursuit of personalization, not from the first touch through the entire experience, through the website experience, down through the registration process, through the post-event nurture. The more personalized we can make that, the more success that we've had. There's certainly many others, but I think if I had to boil it down, I'd say personalization is the biggest one.
Yeah, I agree with you, Mike. I would say differentiated experiences is what is going to, what is really going to get people in. So there is personalization, and then sort of that concepting, creative concepting. I love your idea of innovation lab that you were talking about, or innovation area that you were talking about. I think people are looking for differentiated experiences. And then the value, I think that differentiated experience is sort of, is delivered or delivers value. We are all so busy getting people to attend anything is a tall order. And so how do you drive value through both, content, experience, other things, what they're looking for, and that's where, of course, personalization comes in. If you know what they're looking for, you're giving them what they're looking for. That's what I would imagine is one of the trends.
Anyone else want to answer this question?
I would just say, we look to provide an experience that includes someone's device. A device can be a distraction sometimes from what you're trying to do. So rather than have it be a distraction that we're not influencing, we find ways to bring devices into the experience so that the consumer is interacting with us as they would a normal day.
Okay, so the final question is, what types of customer insights obtained from live events is of most importance to you?
Sorry, could you just repeat the question?
Yeah.
Yes. What types of customer insights obtained from live events is of most importance to you?
For me, since a lot of our events revolve around the services that we offer and the markets that we're in, it's getting the client feedback on whether or not what was presented was of any value to them, and if they see the market different. So some of that qualitative feedback that's live, which was addressed earlier, is really important, and the events allow and foster that face-to-face feedback, qualitative feedback.
And so this is Mike. I'll add one thing. Might not be what you'd expect me to say. I mean, certainly there's a tremendous amount of demand signals that are generated at our events. But one of the things that I have personally found to be the most insightful is we survey intensely around, did our messaging work? Did our content resonate with you? And we try to segment that insight very finely. What worked with prospects? What worked with customers? What worked with return visitors? And we find not only does that help us continually refine the content that we put forward at our events, but responsible for marketing, I then take that into the rest of our content mix and the rest of our messaging mix. And how do we need to refine and tweak our overall content and messaging based on what we've heard in terms of feedback from our live event content. And we push that through the rest of our marketing channels.
Thank you, Mike. And I want to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic virtual event. Thanks again, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.